What up, fam? Welcome to another episode. I keep going with fam. I love that one. What up, fam? No, I don't know. I can't use it.
No.
Hey, LUNICORns, welcome back to another episode. I'm Matt C. Smith, and behind the camera, well, actually not behind the camera, sitting next to me today is...
Rufus Tango.
Every time I'm like, Rufus, say your full name so people know they can search for you, but whatever. Anyway, welcome back to another episode. On Wednesdays, Rufus and I like to discuss topics that have been in the press lately. So today, what are we talking about, Rufus?
Today's topic is Hopin, and they're the fastest growing company in Europe of 2020. They have grown from 6 people to over 400 people. And do you know of the product they're selling?
So I think it's something to do with events, right? Live streaming events and things like that.
Yes, it's engineered to being Zoom for live events. But for everyone who doesn't know what it is, you can see it right here.
With Hopin, you can create live online events that are interactive and personal. Whether you're hosting a live training workshop, bringing your company's remote team together, or launching a full-scale digital conference, it's easy to create an engaging Hopin event for up to hundreds of thousands of people.
All right, Rufus, so why are we talking about Hopin? What do you want to know?
They just raised a C round of $400 million.
Series C, $400 million round.
Yes, setting them at a valuation of $5.3 billion. And that's why they're the fastest growing company in Europe of 2020.
I question that. Fastest growing company and fastest valuation growth are two very different things, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Which one is it, Rufus? I think it's valuation growth.
Yeah.
But also they're growing quite quick, right? So I mean, fill me in. What do you want to talk about them today?
First of all, why are they raising all of that money?
Well, growth, obviously, right? I mean, so I think most of you understand how the startup fundraising cycle goes, right? Maybe I can do a little graphic above here right now. I can do that with you, Rufus, afterwards. The startup fundraising cycle. Now, every single startup, the typical gestation period from kind of creation, ideation, founding to exit is typically about 7 to 8 years. In the modern world we're in today. And in that period, you're going to raise, on average, 5 rounds of funding. Some companies raise a lot more, some don't raise any. But for the most part, the average is 5 rounds of funding. So if they're raising their Series C, obviously each funding round, things tend to increase, right? Like the stakes get higher, the valuation grows 2-3 times every single funding round, unless you're like Clubhouse, which grew 10x, and probably these guys, Hopin, who probably grew 10x between funding rounds. And you raise a funding round between every sort of 12 to 18 months, and then you raise a new funding round. So that works out as roughly 5 funding rounds in the typical kind of 8-year lifetime of a company from founding to exit. So if in their Series C, they're like that middle round, $400 million Series C is enormous. I remember when I was a VC in London, I was investing in Series B and Series C companies. And this is in 2013, 14, 15. And the largest investment I ever made, or the largest Series B I ever participated in, or Series C actually, was a $66 million Series C in Farfetch in 2014 or 15, I forget which year it was. And it's funny because we're in Lisbon, and the founder of Farfetch is from Lisbon. Anyway, fun fact for you.
Yeah, Farfetch has been doing great, haven't they?
Incredible.
When they raise all this money,
yeah,
do they want to approach growing a company? Because I know they bought a company called SteamYard for $250 million.
Okay, that's interesting because sometimes startups, especially when they're raising large investment rounds like that, like if you want to buy a company, right? Buying a company is another way to grow in a non-organic way, right? Because VC funding and startups that raise VC funding, it's famously known as rocket fuel because it fuels you to get to the moon and the stars a lot quicker, right? Because it's an injection of resources, of capital, which means that you don't have to worry about making money, or at least you don't have to worry about making profit from the money you make. So VC funding is effectively a form of debt financing in a way, because it's not, you can't say debt financing because it's not seen as debt financing because it's not actually sitting on the balance sheets. It's equity investment. You're selling shares in your company based on a valuation for that kind of that stuff. But in the example you just gave about using a large amount of money like that to grow, instead of just putting, because obviously at some point in your product market fit and your startup journey, you'll understand that if you put money into this area, you'll get an outcome, whether that be customer growth or revenue growth, for example, right? And obviously the aim of a startup in the first 2 to 4 years is to figure out where you can put where the pressure points you put money in and get value out, right? whatever you define as value. And they're in that phase. Now, obviously, they can keep growing the platform. And obviously, they want to maybe be the number one platform for live streaming and events globally. So it's a timely thing, right? Because obviously, everyone right now in the event industry, last year, all the events were closed. This year, most likely, they're going to be only released again in smaller, instead of like a 5,000 person event, maybe 500, right? So that's a 10x reduction.
Yeah.
So they're looking at ways to continue to do large scale events that are value to a large scale audience, maybe even more than 5,000 people, but obviously at home, right? Hopin wants to capitalize on that space. So if they can get a huge amount of money right now, like crazy amounts, and spend the next 2 years getting to be the number one player in the game, then they basically own the market. So basically it's a race with all of these players to become the number one. Now, a way that you can, fast track that race is by buying other companies or competitors, basically, right? So you can, instead of growing naturally and just sort of putting money into those pressure points, like, for example, building your technology, making it better, building your sales team and getting them out to, and scaling into different markets, probably the rest of the money they raised can go to that. But the 250 million of the 400 they raised can go to just buying a company that really maybe already has some existing technology you haven't built. Therefore, you basically buy yourself a fast track to having a more developed product, better functionality, but also team, right? There's a thing called an acqui-hire, which in this instance, I guess it probably wasn't. But my company, I was an acqui-hire. My company was acquired for the skills of the people in there, which is sometimes what big companies like this do. Because also, even if you have competitors, right? We've seen this in like the ride sharing industry, or kind of the Uber bought a bunch of different players that set up also in the delivery space, like the last mile delivery, Deliveroos, Delivery Heroes, all these organizations. They typically would start in one city: London, Berlin, San Francisco, right? Same as the scooters. That's a good example. Like, basically, it was a low threshold for other players to emerge in other markets. So, for example, Delivery Hero or Deliveroo in the last mile delivery food service game, they explode in their core market and the neighboring cities, but then they want to go to another region of the world, and there's some already local established player. They can either go in and compete with them, or they could buy them. So that's why a lot of those organizations or those startups in the last mile delivery game, as well as the scooter mobility game, were just buying up local small players, because firstly, they don't have to go through all the compliance of becoming registered. They just automatically buy the registration rights and just rebrand it. Also, they have an existing infrastructure and an ecosystem. Also, they don't have to go and hire 50 or 500 new people in that location, because they already acquired the team. So that's actually like a really good way to fast track growth. And that's why you're seeing a lot of companies today raising a lot more money. That's what SoftBank was very good at. When SoftBank funded WeWork, what was a lot of the money going into? Acquisitions. I think like 30% of it went to acquisitions. I'll recommend a book to read. It's crazy. And I think Hulu just came up with a really good episode about WeWork and Adam Newman.
It's a crazy book.
It's
I read
a crazy
it too.
book. What's it called again? The $1 Billion Loser, right?
Yeah.
We'll link it below. I highly recommend you read that, just because it's just amazing to hear. Anyway.
As you were saying, like, buying companies, fast tracking, and they already went from 6 people to over 400, and they have a goal of 800 end of this year. My question is, how is it possible to get so many people on board? It's like,
with difficulty. Well, yeah, mate. I mean, that's the famous question, right? When I was part of a startup, Star.com, and we grew from 4 people to 68 by the time I left in 10 months.
Wow.
And then it was 150 a few months later. So they grew and how do you do that? You actually have to hire full-time hiring teams, or there are a lot of companies now that have, because the beautiful thing about what the startup industry over the last 30 years has created is it's side industries to support that industry. Excuse me. A good metaphor for that is basically Airbnb, right? Yeah. Airbnb created Airbnb servicing companies. The startup industry created startup servicing companies. So in the example of this, like high funded, high growth company that needs to acquire a lot of good developers, a lot of good talent, literally like they need to make 50 hires a week. And some of those, I've seen startups in the growth stage measure their weekly hiring growth, which is insane, right? And obviously there's teething problems with that. But because it's been going now through a few cycles, it's been like 20 years of companies growing at this scale and this kind of hiring ability. it's kind of being worked out to be a bit of a science at the moment. So there are organizations that have been launched, which are basically like startup glorified recruitment organizations, which basically specialize in, and VCs are connected to. This is a fun fact for you to know, that VCs are often connected to these organizations. So then they go and fund a company for 10 million, 100 million, 400 million in this case, for example. Obviously, that would be a network of investors, a consortium, several of them. They will have contacts to help you hire. I've seen VCs, and actually, if you look at the majority of the European VCs, Index Ventures, Boulderton, a lot of the big players, they advertise on the VC's website all the jobs that are available in their portfolio companies, because obviously they want to support those companies and actually being able to achieve that growth. Therefore, they need people. And they need people because they've given them money to hire those people. And that's what the funding goes to, because you need to hire a load of people before they start turning a revenue or a profit for you, basically.
And you're going to meet up with Hopins, right?
I know. This is crazy. Rufus and I literally were chatting the other day about Hopin, and we're going to make this episode. And then I got an email from Lauma at TechChill, which is the number one or the leading tech event in the Baltics, speaking about tech events and Hopin supporting those. So I'm actually going to interview the CMO of Hopin on the 20th of May, I think. I'm not sure. I think that's when we're recording it, and it'll be out during the event, which I think is in June in Riga. So yeah, wait, I'll make sure I link that when that finally comes out. You can check that out. But hey, here's a good fun question. What question should I ask the CMO? Yes. I don't actually know who it is yet, so I don't know if it's a he or she. What questions do you want me to ask the CMO of Hopin? What questions do you have? And I will actually pass that on, because I think I'm moderating the conversation. So let me know in the comments.
Yeah, what do you guys want to know from Hopins?
What do you want to know?
What tool did they go in for to okay, we're different in that
what
space?
Feature? That's a really good question, Rufus. What was their unique selling point, effectively, to put it simply, that set them apart from others?
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what he or she, I probably should find out who it is, the CMO of Hopin will say, whether it's so this feature or that feature, or could just, honestly, in this instance, and also a good example of why they've raised so much money so quickly and grown so quickly, could be that basically the VCs and the people with the money have said, you're the horse that's gonna win this race. And they're just given. They said, well, the horse that's going to win this race has to win this race this year. So here's 400 million. Go and buy this company to get their tech and get their team, and then hire like crazy and win the game, basically. And then they're going to be betting on the one platform that allows people and organizations to do live events in the best way possible.
It sounds like a game.
Dude, it is a game. Life's a game. Yeah, that's the reality of it, really.
It sounds like a group of big investors. Okay. I believe in you. You can make it.
Yep.
Do it. I will put all my money on it and go for it. But it sounds crazy. But it's probably the reality of it.
It's exactly the reality. You know what the question I'd always ask myself? The final question, past due diligence phase, past term sheet phase, before I would write the check or whatever, when I was investing as a VC. You know what the question I would always ask myself?
Is this the right team?
Exactly. I've told you before, haven't I?
Yeah.
What I would say is, I'd ask myself this. If anyone is going to do this, so if anyone is going to pull this off, is this the team that's going to pull it off? And that's the thing with Hopin. It's if any of the other companies that are creating platforms, there was one called Deal. I forget. There was a bunch of different platforms I've seen, which are all great, and they're all unique in their own way, right? Some are bigger than others. Some have raised VC, some haven't. But what is the difference between Hopin and the others? If any of those teams are ever going to pull it off, it's them. And it's also not just exactly the team, but it's who does the team know? Who does the team have access to? What is their story so far?
Okay.
So it's not just exactly the team. Obviously, the team is 80% of it, but the other 20% are other factors, kind of systematic risk factors. Are they in a high growth market? Are they in? Do they have they signed up PwC and have they signed up the big four already? So they're more likely to get the others, and there's defensibility in the product. There's a lot of questions to answer, and if you answer all of those, then it's this is the team, and that's what these VCs probably have thought. Let's give them the money and make them run.
That's so cool. I really like that. But if you guys want to, there's the camera.
I love it. Rufus always looks at the other camera,
Yeah. If you guys have any question Matt should ask the Hopin CMO, let us know in the comments, and please subscribe.
Please like and subscribe to this video.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Rufus, what do we say to everyone?
See you next time.
See you next time. See you in the next video.
Yeah.
Have a nice day. Ciao.
Bye.